Today we're going to be reviewing the Air Element. So the Air Element revolves around Ayatin the Exiled Prince, which is the champion for that element. And in my opinion, his effect is rather unique. So let's read it here. It says, once per turn, pay 1 and sacrifice a unit you control. Put into play 1 air unit from your hand whose cost is greater than the sacrifice unit. It needs to be 1 greater. Sorry, I forgot that. It's rather key. So this is really cool. I really like this effect. It allows for a lot of combos. I think this element is one of the hardest to play because of the combos and the resources needed to make those combos. Whenever the intro decks were first introduced, it wasn't really widely played. And I think it's because of the intro deck was rather weak in comparison to the water or the dark intro decks. But with Betrayal being released here in the next 2 weeks, maybe we can see if we got some better cards. So this is the champion with this element, and then let's go take a look at the spirit. So this is the spirit that goes for green, and it is Kite the Air Spirit. So let's read his effect here. It says, once per turn during your turn, discard 1 card. Return target air unit you control to its owner's hand, and if you do, switch one of your exhausted shards to active. And then his Soul Burst reads, return target unit with cost 3 or less to its owner's hand. So again, kind of like the champion, a very unique ability. Air revolves around bouncing cards back to your hand or tributing, like the champion, tributing a unit to bring out a bigger one. So it's very, very combo heavy, very intricate play. So that's the reason why I like this element so much. So I was really excited to see what Betrayal was going to give us for this element. So let's see if we come across some cards that kind of interact with our champion and our spirit. So with our previous video, with the dark set analysis review, we started with the commons, and we're going to start with the commons here. So the first common that we have for air is Disintegration Shot, which is a cost of 2 spell, and it says choose 1, destroy target augment, or destroy target unit with cost 1 or less. So right now, we don't really have any great augments that I know of other than the dark augment Philosopher's Stone, which we reviewed in our first video. The issue is, because this is not instacast, whenever the Philosopher's Stone comes down, it's probably going to activate its ability right away, and this would be useless. And the second effect of destroy target unit with cost 1 or less is something that, in my opinion, is not very good. So not too good of a common to start. Our second common is Dux, Skyraider Captain. He has a cost of 4 with 2500 power. He has an arrive ability that says put into play 1 Skyraider unit from your hand with cost 3 or less. So the air intro deck revolves mainly around Skyraiders and their airships. So this is an addition to the intro deck units, which isn't necessarily bad. It's just, in my opinion, the Skyraiders weren't great. So I don't know how this is going to fit. I think the ability is okay, but I don't think there's a whole lot of really good cost 3 or less Skyraiders. So this is still up for debate, I guess. Next we have Royal Command, which is a 4-cost spell that says switch all air units you control to active. Air units get plus 1000 this turn. So this is a very interesting card. In my opinion, this could be really good because right now the meta is rather dominated by a card called Shards of Winter in water. And what that card does is it exhausts all of your units. So this card could actually come down and switch all of your air units back to active, so then that you could attack that turn. So it's a decent counter to Shards of Winter. It's just with all of these new cards being released in Betrayal, I don't know if Shards of Winter is going to be like the dominant spell anymore. But anyway, this could be decent. Next we have Sanseek Over, which is a 4-cost unit with 2500 attack, and it reads your opponent cannot target air units you control with spells. So in my opinion, not too bad. You know, having protection for all of your air units, including itself, doesn't seem too bad for common. So yeah, pretty decent. Next we have Sanseek Drifter, which is a 4-cost unit with 2500 attack and a ruined ability, which says switch up to 2 of your shards to active. So this card here directly interacts with our champion, Ayatin. So whenever Ayatin would sacrifice him and bring out a 5-cost unit, Sanseek Drifter would then switch 2 of your shards to active. So this card interacts well with the champion. It's a 4-cost, so it can bring out any 5-cost. Maybe we need to see what kind of 5-cost units we have in Betrayal for air. But right now, this seems like a pretty good 4-drop for a common. Next, we have Sanseek Traveler, who is a 2-cost unit with 1500 power, and he has an effect that reads, when this card attacks, switch 1 of your shards to active. So I really like this. You can pay your 2 costs to bring him out on turn 2, attack the next turn, and have 1 of your shards active for your Ayatin to use for his effect. So simple, but a pretty good 2-drop. Next we have Skytree Command Center. It's a 1-cost augment that reads, when a unit is returned to your hand from the field, place 1 counter on this card for each. And then it has an exhaust ability that says remove any number of counters from this card, put into play 1 unit from your hand with cost equal to the number of the counters removed. I like this card. I mean, the main purpose of your air deck is to bounce cards back and forth from your field to your hand. And this gives you pretty much free summons without exhausting your shards. So I like this. For a cost of 1, it's not too bad. So I'm liking what I'm seeing so far. Next is Skytree Glide Trooper, which is a 3-cost unit with 2000 power, and it has an effect that reads, if 2 or more air units have returned to your hand this turn, this card costs 2 less to play. So it could essentially be a 1-drop, which, you know, 1-drop for 2000 power is never bad. But returning 2 air units in your turn, I wouldn't say it's super uncommon. It's just something that I think if you're doing that, you're probably looking for a bigger play at that point. So I don't know how viable this card is. Next is Skytree Marksman, which is a 3-cost unit with 1500 power, and it has an arrive ability that says return another target air unit you control to its owner's hand, and if you do, deal 1500 to target unit. This card doesn't seem too bad. 1500 power for a 3-drop is rather low, but at the same time, it plays into your deck strategy with returning an air unit, and whenever it does that, it deals 1500, so it's a good card to play on your opponent's turn to kind of disrupt plays. So it's not too bad of a 3-drop, in my opinion. I think it could see some play. So our last common is Terror of the Sandsea, which is a 7-cost unit with 4000 power. So a lot of power, but expensive. Let's read his effects though. So his effect reads, this card costs 1 less to play for each unit returned to the hand from the field this turn. Okay, so we can reduce his cost by returning our units to our hand. And then his effect reads, when this card attacks, your opponent sacrifices a unit. Well, that's not that bad. For a 7-drop, 4000 powers, not too shabby. And the potential of having it cost less, and also possibly bringing it out with Ayatin's effect. So I don't know, maybe some possibilities here. especially sacrificing a 6 cost on your opponent's turn to bring this out, and then the immediate next turn being able to attack with it seems pretty neat. So, I don't know, not too bad for a high cost common. So, with the common cards complete, we can now move on to the rares. So our first rare is Winds of the Cloud Sea, which has an X cost. It's a instacast spell, and it says return X target units you control to their owner's hands, then put into play 1 unit from your hand with cost X or less. So your X cost here is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever. So you're going to have to pay the 2 cost, let's say, to return 2 units to your hand, and then you will play a 2 cost unit. So on the surface, this doesn't seem very good, just because you're spending a lot of resources. You're spending 2 in our scenario here just to play this, then you bounce 2 and you only bring out a 2 cost. So I don't know, maybe this interacts with something else in the element, but on the surface it seems kind of costly for something that doesn't have a whole lot of reward to it. Our next rare is Skytree Hawk, which has a cost of 2 and it has 1000 power. And it has an effect that reads, when this card is returned to your hand from the field, you can discard this card to draw 2 cards. Alright, well I really like this card. I mean, for a cost of 2 and then having some benefit whenever it's returned to your hand is really nice. So I could see this card being maxed out for sure. This is a really good 2-drop, especially for a mono air deck. I really like this. The next rare is Monarchs Sky Dagger, which is a 2-cost augment, which will be equipped to a target unit whenever it comes into play. And it has an arrive ability as well, where you put a counter on it. You can then remove that counter and choose one of the following abilities. You deal 500 to a target unit, or the equipped unit gains 500 that turn. It also reads, if this card is in your discard zone when an air unit is returned from the field to your hand, you can add this card to your hand. I mean, it's kind of cool that it comes back whenever an air unit is returned from the field to your hand. But both its effects aren't really good. So I don't know, to pay a 2 cost to put this into play whenever I think you want to be using your shards to keep Ayatin live or something of that nature. I don't know how often this would be used. Maybe it's a one-of, gaining 500. I don't know, maybe it's relevant. Or dealing 500 to, a pesky guardian like Phantasmal guards, I mean, for blue. So, I don't know, maybe a one-of. So, our last rare is Garga, Keeper of Gales. It's a 5-cost unit with 3000 power, with an arrive ability that says, choose a cost, return all units of the chosen cost to their owner's hands, and if 2 or more units are returned to the hand with this effect, this card gains quickness, meaning that it can attack the same turn that it's summoned. So I really like this card. This card's really good. The arrive ability is nice because it plays into Ayatin, our champion, so we can sacrifice a 4-cost unit on our turn and bring out Garga and bounce things on our opponent's turn. So I really like that. Or it can be used on our turn because it has that quickness ability if we return 2 or more units with his effect. So it's really good. I really like this card. For rare, it's really nice and it plays perfectly into the strategy of air. So yeah, only good things to say about this one. So moving on now to the super rares. So our first one is Ayatin Righteous Outlaw. He has a cost of 4 for 2500 power, and he has an effect that reads, discard this card from your hand, return target air unit you control with cost 3 or less to its owner's hand. Then it says if this card is in your discard zone, when an air unit is returned to your hand from the field for the second time in a turn, you can put this card into play exhausted. Expel it when it leaves the field. So this card is so good. I think this card is amazing. It plays right into the air elements strategy, into bouncing your cards, so you can return any cost 3 or less air unit to your hand. Obviously, I think the best target for him is that Skytree Hawk, which whenever it's bounced back to your hand, you get to draw 2. So I think that's his prime target so far amongst the cards that we read. And then also, if you return 2 cards from your field to your hand while he's in the grave, he comes out for free. Sorry, I said graveyard, I meant discard zone. I'm sorry, Yu-Gi-Oh talk. Yeah, so this card I think is an instant 3 of. He's also a 4 cost, so whenever he's sacrificed with our Champions effect, he can bring out Garga, which we just reviewed. So great synergy with the deck. I think this card is really good. Very good super rare. Next we have Lightning Shot, which is a 3 cost spell that says deal 3,000 to target unit and 1,000 to another target unit. So this card seems pretty good too. I mean, 3,000 for a 3 cost is already great value there, and then you get to deal 1,000 to another target unit. I think early game, this is a really good card. Definitely on turn 3, taking out 2 monsters, because you're probably going to run across something that has 2,000 power or less on the field. It's good value. This is another good super rare. So we got 2 good super rares for air. Our next super rare is actually an Omega Magic, which we discussed in our very first video when we were reviewing the Dark Element. So as I described in that video, the Omega Magics are something that every element got in Betrayal, and these Omega Magics get better as the game goes on. So the less towers that you have available, so the more that were destroyed by your opponent, the stronger these Omega Magics get. So Green's Omega Magic is Omega Magic K's, which is a 2 cost spell with instacast, and it says if you have 2 or less towers remaining, this card costs 0 to play. And its effect is target unit cannot deal damage or attack this turn, draw 1 card. So again, these Omega Magics, they're they're solid cards, and they're really good value towards the end of the game. And this one's no exception. I mean, having a 0 cost spell that pretty much protects you from 1 monster that turn is really cool. And then it replaces itself. So I think this Omega Magic is good, just like the Dark Omega Magic was good. So with the super rares out of the way, we will now move on to the Argent rares. So just to recap from our previous video whenever we reviewed the Dark Element, we discussed how Argent rares, there's 2 for each element in this box. So the Air Element has 2 Argent rares, and you can only use 1 of each of those cards. So the first one that we have here is Konos the Aerial Fortress, which is a 7 cost unit with 4,000 power. It's a legendary airship. It has the Guardian ability, so that means whenever your opponent attacks, it can exhaust itself and block that attack. It also has an effect that reads, units in front of this card cannot attack and have minus 2,000. It also reads, once per turn, you can return another air unit you control to its owner's hand. This card is unaffected by spells this turn. So, like the Argent rares that we reviewed for the Dark Element, we're off to a good start here. I mean, having the Guardian ability with 4,000 power, it's going to be hard to get over. You also have this unique ability where if anything is in front of it, it can't even attack. And it minuses 2,000, so you can kind of block off that position in a sense. To play this on your turn, on your opponent's turn, sacrificing a 6 unit to bring this out on your opponent's turn to block the card that they just brought out seems really nice. And also, you can return an air unit to have it immune to spells, so it kind of protects itself. I really like it. I mean, it's going to be hard for me not to like Argent Rares, but this is a pretty good one, for sure. So we've reached our last card for the Air Element in the first set of Argent Saga. So this card is Sylvia's Spirit of Air. It's a 4-cost unit with 2500 power. It's a legendary elemental, so you can only use one of it in your deck. And it has the Arrive ability, choose even or odd cost. Your opponent places all their units with the chosen cost on the bottom of their owner's decks in any order. So yeah, this card's really good. It's a pretty low cost for a really good ability like that. And also with the Air Element, being able to bounce this back to your hand and then use it multiple times just seems really good. We just saw with the last Argent Rare that Konost card can bounce this to make itself immune, and then the very next turn you can bring this out and bounce all of the units that your opponent just summoned maybe. So yeah, this card's great. Obviously it's included, and I think it makes Air a real contender. You know, being able to use this multiple times, I really like it. So yeah, that's pretty much it for Air. I'm really pleased with the cards that they released here. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.